This is the end of the beginning. Welcome to today's show. I wanted to do a video about a few other things, including what they're now blaming the fire on in Maui. And of course, these people are now scrambling. They're scrambling because they're having a tough time holding up the narrative, which of course initially was about wildfires from climate change. Now they're kind of pivoting a little bit because they didn't realize that people had so much common sense. Now, of course, there's, well, there's still many that do not, but it's really the story that they put out there, and then the DEW story has now spread like wildfire, no pun intended. And people are really starting to say, it is interesting that some of these trees haven't been burned down. It is interesting, isn't it, that this story has circulated of boats actually catching fire out on the sea. How would boats be catching fire? Well, some of this stuff is just so over the top. It just continues to point more and more towards a DEW. In fact, it's almost 100% a lock at this point. I mean, if you're not thinking that, then you're not thinking. But this video is circulating where you can even see the ring of fire around Lahaina, all which looks controlled. So as the narrative crumbles, they're pivoting towards a narrative about electrical fires. And I'll get into the electrical fires, of course, because this has to do with above ground electricity, which they want to get rid of. They want it underground. They want it controlled. And of course, they've talked about the dangers of it. There's things involving zoning issues. There's things involving the governor there and what he just did as far as an emergency declaration that was put in place weeks prior about zoning. So all these things just point, towards massive amounts of guilt. And I also wanted to cover this because so many people out there have asked me, people on the website have shared it, people have posted in the comment section since the first day, a couple of days ago, where I started talking about the wildfires. And that's, of course, the sigil magic, the stuff that I constantly cover. And I know that a lot of people out there will see it and they'll still show people and they'll go, oh, that doesn't mean anything. But of course we had Mountain Dew, right? Mountain Dew, dew as in direct energy weapon, DEW, have Maui Blast as one of their flavors right in front of everyone's faces. But most people out there will see that and they'll say, that's just a coincidence, just like all the episodes that we've seen of The Simpsons over the years, where they just go, oh, that's a coincidence. Oh, that means nothing. Oh, there's a movie with the same exact plot. Oh, that means nothing. This means nothing. Because they're so desensitized by seeing these things that they can't actually comprehend that they're real. They just think that they're mere coincidences. And of course, none of these people are actually critically thinking. They're so dumbed down that all they need, they think that, the truth is whatever the news says, and then they just regurgitate it. They don't think for themselves. So we had the Maui Dew, which everybody saw. And again, you saw the boats catching fire. If this was an actual wildfire, how come all the trees weren't down? How are boats out on the sea on fire? So what they're doing now is they're pivoting towards this new narrative of an electrical fire. And just listen to some of the key things they talk about here. Talking about Hawaiian electric power lines, according to lawyers' investigation. Lawyers investigating? Listen to this news clip.
The death toll on Maui now stands at 96, and that number is expected to climb as search and recovery efforts continue. Hawaii's governor says recovery will take an incredible amount of time.
Now, this fire began on the 8th, late on Tuesday, and what the result was this, the destruction of Lahaina. And when I say destruction, having been at ground zero twice, there is very little left there.
As of last night, the governor says that 2,700 structures were destroyed in Lahaina and that the fire that decimated the area will certainly be the worst natural disaster that Hawaii has ever faced. It is also the deadliest fire in the United States in over a century. The estimated cost of the losses is approaching $6 billion. The fires on Maui began Tuesday and were fueled by strong winds from Hurricane Dora. Little warning was given to residents as the flames barreled towards Lahaina. It said the warning sirens did not go off. Officials did send out alerts to phones, TVs, and radio stations, but power and cellular outages may have limited their reach. According to CNN, a lawsuit has been filed against Hawaii's main electric provider. It alleges that power lines blown over by Hurricane Dora led to the devastating Lahaina wildfire, and that Hawaiian Electric Industries chose not to de-energize their power lines during the high wind watch and red flag warning conditions for Maui before the Lahaina fire started. The attorneys are asking the judge to certify the case as a class action lawsuit. Officials on Maui also say a review will be conducted looking at what happened before and during the wildfires. And as for the scope of the devastation, it's setting in for survivors, and they are now telling their stories.
I ran out of the car and ran for my life, ran down to the ocean. I was only a quarter mile from the ocean, and they stayed in their car. They died with their dogs and everything. 3 of my friends in one car and 2 dogs died.
FEMA is assisting with the response and assessing the damage with more than 400 personnel on the ground. Teams of cadaver dogs are looking for the missing. As of Saturday night, just 3% of the fire area had been searched. Locally, the Los Angeles County Fire Department sent 3 of their canine teams to help with the search and recovery efforts. They departed from Maui yesterday and expect to be there for at least 2 weeks.
I've met people impacted by this already, and I'm very excited to go out there and help out with my dog Six here.
Officials on Maui say 4,500 people are in need of shelter, and many are trying to help. Yesterday in Wilmington, hundreds of volunteers spent hours collecting, packing, and shipping necessities to those displaced. This was put on by the International Longshore Warehouse Union. Organizers say they still need items such as cots, tents, sleeping bags, and hygiene kits, to name a few.
So it's very suspicious, of course, and it should be suspicious. We all know what really happened there. At this point, everybody should know what happened there because it looks like a bomb zone. That's what it looks like. It doesn't look like a wildfire. It looks like a bomb zone. So lawyers are investigating the cause of massive Maui wildfires that killed 96 people, claim the blaze was the result of damaged equipment owned by Hawaiian Electric. So they're still mixing in their narrative here with the climate, with the electrical grid, how we need to shift towards green energy. We already know how Hawaii claimed to be the most green state in the entire country, and I covered that in a previous video. And now they're going to use this narrative about, oh, the damaged equipment. So we're supposed to believe that a hurricane, right, which didn't affect the big island of Hawaii at all, didn't affect the other islands, just affected Maui, brought no rain whatsoever, just brought some winds at 36 miles per hour, which isn't the strongest winds we've ever heard of. But 36 mile per hour winds, 35 mile per hour winds, according to who you listen to. But if you listen to people on Twitter or TikTok, or not TikTok, Twitter, or other social media platforms that are posting stuff who are on the island, they say there was no winds whatsoever. And now, of course, they're pivoting to using this narrative of the damaged equipment and the electrical grid and Hawaii Electric and how all this stuff needs to be reshaped and redone. Of course, this all ties into the global, Agenda 2030 and the New World Order agenda to redo the entire power grid. And don't be surprised when this stuff starts happening in the States and they blame it on the power grid, right? But we know that direct energy weapons with these smart meters on people's homes, what they're going to be doing, they're going to be doing the same thing in a town near you, unfortunately, and they're going to get away with it because nobody out there is ever going to believe it. The military is working with them. I mean, it's just a really sad state of affairs. It really is, and everybody needs to remain in prayer. But when you talk about the damaged electrical equipment, not only can they tie that into Agenda 2030 and to tie that into, rebuilding all this stuff, you could also tie this into the rezoning issue, right? That's another coincidence that the governor, who, if you listen to people who are on the island from Maui, from Lahaina, they've been complaining about this guy, saying that there's no chance that this guy ever got voted in. And of course, we all know that none of these people get voted in. I keep hearing people talk about, hey, if you want change, vote them out. And it amazes me. If you want change, you really got to throw them out. That's really what has to happen. But at this point, the amount of, the weaponry that they have, because we've all been asleep and allowed them to do this over the last 50 years, our parents, our grandparents, living the quote unquote American dream with the picket fence, where the biggest stress of the day was, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? Right? Oh, you felt all protected by Big Brother and you felt protected by the government. The government loves you and cares about you. There's no worry. America's the greatest place on earth. They've just been building this up over time, waiting and waiting until they got society dumbed down enough, until they got the technology all in their pocket, till the globalists could all align with one another for the perfect time. And this is it. This is it right now. Because when you see things like this occur in Maui and you don't see 100% of the people question the news and say, you know what? All of these people are working together against all of us. And you actually waste your time believing in the Hunter Biden laptop, the men having babies, Trump's indictment, and you waste your energy and time on that. That's exactly what they want you to do. So we had the rezoning thing. The governor, Josh Green, again, it's right in front of our faces, right? The guy's name is Green, Josh Green, as in green energy, right? Who is from Pennsylvania, conveniently somehow became governor in Hawaii. And I know, you don't have to live in the state to become the governor, but Hawaii is a little bit different. They don't usually vote for, some white guy from Pennsylvania. But again, your votes don't count. So this governor wiped away regulatory barriers to housing with the stroke of a pen. Back in July, the governor of Hawaii issued emergency powers to remove barriers to housing construction. So in other words, they wanted to rezone everything there. They wanted to remap it out. They wanted to buy out the people who were there. They wanted to get rid of the homeless. Here in Maui, they wanted to get rid of the homeless. In America, they don't want to do anything. They want everyone to be homeless, right? Because they have plans here. But they wanted to rezone everything. They wanted people to move out. They're trying to price them out of their land. They wouldn't leave. They wouldn't give their land to Larry Fink and BlackRock. So what did they do? They torched them. That's what they did. Because again, what these people are capable of is unfathomable, and how sick they are, you couldn't possibly imagine. You couldn't possibly imagine. Because if you think this is like the peak of their sickness, this is nothing compared to the stuff they do in darkness, behind closed doors. Okay? So some of the stuff too with the rezoning, of course, and tying into this guy, you heard him, the governor, Josh Green. You heard him over and over the last couple of days. He's immediately talking about rebuilding Maui, rebuilding Lahaina. They haven't even gotten all the bodies yet. They haven't even mourned the victims yet, and they're talking about rebuilding, right? And we all saw the stuff with Oprah, which was great because, I did a video on Oprah. I know that obviously I don't get many views anymore, so I didn't have anything to do with it, but that's how God works. A lot of people were talking about Oprah, right? All kind of in the same day or two, because Oprah went to she went down to the shelter and they rejected her at the shelter. And it was so obvious. It couldn't have been more obvious. She's walking around putting pillows behind people's backs and someone's filming her, that it was all a PR stunt, because that's what these people do. And people are catching on. And that's, again, I've mentioned this many times and I'll continue to. When I first started my channel, I talked about philanthropy. I talked about some of the books that I've read on Skull and Bones and things like that. And I've always had this thing in my gut about philanthropy versus, seeing a guy on the streets and saying, hey, he asked for money and he needs help and you want to buy him a sandwich, you want to do something good for him. And that's one thing of donating money. I'm not saying don't do that. But philanthropy, the mindset of philanthropy is, something that's always made me sick in a sense, because these people are out there flaunting it. You don't go give a homeless guy $5 and then go home and call your friends and tell them, I gave a homeless guy $5. Right? But philanthropists love to show you this stuff. And there's a reason for it, because it gives them a shield of protection. It gives them a shield of protection as far as their character goes. Oh, Jeff Bezos would never do that stuff with children or anybody else. He's a philanthropist. He's already given $100 million to Maui. He couldn't have been behind torching it. Oh, yeah. Oprah Winfrey, she owns all the land there. Oh, but she was putting a pillow behind people's backs. She wasn't offering her home as shelter to these plebeians, these low-level humans that are so low, to Oprah. She wouldn't open her door to them. Of course not. Of course not. But she'll show up there with a camera crew so that people out there can see what a great person she is. And people are catching on to their crock, because that's what it is. It's a crock. All the things they do are a crock. They are liars like their father, the devil. So just to recap some of the stuff that we've seen here, right? The Mountain Dew, right? DEW, dew as in direct energy weapon, right? Now people are like, that's just a coincidence. Well, it's worth noting, isn't it? Because they use sigil magic all the time, over and over. It's very interesting that they have Maui blast, right? Because didn't a blast just occur there? A DEW blast? Or was it a electrical fire? Wink, wink. And that, of course, is the narrative of today. Look, they probably put this out there because they're saying, well, lawyers said this and they're going to investigate it. And they're going to see if people buy it. Because they probably are pivoting and panicking at the same time. I think that they're a bit surprised that so many people pointed this out. I mean, they should know better after what they did in California and how many people out there called them out on their bullcrap and said this is a direct energy weapon, right? And then, of course, you have some of those shots from the plane, a perfectly controlled fire, a perfect fire, looks like a ritual fire around Lahaina, boats catching fire, right? Boats catching fire? I mean, no one's suspicious of anything, right? Boats catching fire. Then, of course, the sirens and those things not going off. There's no rain in the hurricane, by the way. Another thing, right? Reporters there, you don't see any wind going on. I mean, it's incredible, the stuff that they spew out. The fact that they've been trying to buy the residents out of that land, right? They've been trying to buy them out of that land, and they said no. So they've been trying to price them out of the land, and they won't go. That's fact. All the people there have been talking about it. It's been a big issue. I showed you the article from the Daily Mail yesterday from March, right? How much land Oprah has now. Buying all the land that they can get. Zuckerberg buying all the land in Kauai that they can get for a reason. And we'll get into it in other detail in other videos. I talk about this more about what the potential is to go on in these islands. But they're buying all this land up while they're trying to get these people out of the island. The people won't budge. Fink wants to come in. All these guys want to come in and do this stuff. So is it a coincidence that they just burned them out of there? That they just annihilated them? But here's the problem. Again, I say this all the time for those of you that listen. People can't wrap their heads around people being this wicked, that they would do something like this. Now, if you told them that was Russia, and it was Russia they did it, they'd be like, yeah, and that's great. But they couldn't imagine them doing it to their own people. These people have no sides, left or right. That's for the peasants out there to stay distracted. These people hate humanity. They view us as cattle, as lower than cattle. So to think that they wouldn't do this to their own, there is no their own. America, they don't care about America. They care about their bloodlines. They care about their fellow secret society members, their fellow Satanists, and they barely care about them. They do their father, the devil's work. So they don't care about the red, white, and blue. But people can't wrap their heads around people being this wicked. Because if they could, if they saw what these people did in darkness, that would probably wake them up. But there's probably still be some of these lunatics out there that defend their actions because they're so foregone. They're so wicked themselves because they've been, so self-empowered and become such narcissists that they would never admit that they were wrong, or they'll never admit how bad these people that, they're idolaters, right? The Bible talks about idolaters. Well, the majority of these people that we can't seem to wake up are idolaters. They worship these celebrities. They worship these politicians. They idolize them. So whatever these people say and do, they will follow. And there's a reason that, idolaters are mentioned with the people thrown in the lake of fire. Because, they're a part of just as big a part of the problem as the sorcerers, as the wicked themselves. So, again, to recap the stuff with the Mountain Dew, the boats on fire, the ring of fire, you got them now saying an electrical fire, which is very convenient for their smart city and their green energy. And this is just this video, but obviously there's 20 other things I've talked about in the other videos, including the meeting in January with the smart cities, right? The 100% green being Hawaii, and of course, Josh Green being the governor, right? How about the emergency declaration he put in place with zoning because they want to rezone Maui? Well, now they can rezone Maui. No problem, right? He wanted to rezone Maui. Well, now you can. They said, look, we want to rezone Maui. How can we do this as quickly as possible? Because we moved this up to Agenda 2025. Well, I guess we'll just have to use one of those weapons that we have sitting there that people think don't exist. And then when we do it, we'll just say, well, of course we didn't do it. We're not sick people like that. Yeah. They're sicker than you could possibly imagine. possibly ever imagine. So I want to just cover all these topics in one without doing separate videos on them. Obviously, I'll continue to cover this. There's other stuff I want to cover with these smart cities that people need to know about and how they're going to implement them. So that'll be other upcoming videos, so stay tuned for those. A reminder to subscribe to my backup channels if you haven't yet. It's important that you guys get over there to the backup channels now. Obviously, at any point, the more, I have one of my videos actually, I don't know if somebody shared it. I'm assuming some channel must have shared it and caused people to come over because there's been a little bit of a flow of new subs, which is great to see. Because it's hard, to get new subs these days. But now that I'm a new YouTuber, it's a good thing to get more eyeballs on a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about. But that also means a lot more people will be going after my content. But we already know there's a large plethora of packers of the fudge who follow my channel around and love to flag it. So just make sure you sub to the other channels. Whatever they try to do, they're not going to take the fight out of me. As down as I might get sometimes, I'll always get back on my feet and battle back. I'm not going to quit. So I thank everybody again for your support. Thank you to all the new Patrons out there. It goes a long way. So thank you so much for your support. God bless all of you, as always, and your families.